Till after the Reagan assassination attempt, the top aides didn't have the briefcase containing the codes for launching nuclear missiles, the Veep was unavailable, and no one knew what to do. A Soviet sub then moved closer than usual to the US. It's quite contradictory to what the USSR did when JFK was assassinated. They tracked all their agents and vehemently denied that the assassination was orchestrated by the SU and rejected the notion that Oswald was a Soviet agent because he spent time there. This denial was because they do not want Johnson to use the assassination as an attempt to rouse anti-communist sentiment, stop the post-missile crisis negotiations and invade Cuba and invoke war. Absent invoking the 25th Amendment, the president is still the president unless he dies. It isn't about the presidential line of succession at that point. It is about who gives orders when the president is incapacitated but not dead. The National Security Act of 1947 indicated that the Secretary of Defense would be the principal assistant to the president. The point I'm making is that there was chaos. Haig was the senior official actually at the White House, and he tried to take charge and keep things orderly as best he could. He got a lot of shit for stepping up to fill a void, even if he was misguided. But for a short time the country had no one who was legally in charge. Secretary of State Haig also attempted to assert authority, assuming that he was third in line behind the VP, who was unavailable. This was not how the line of succession went. Edit, mixed Haig and Reagan up. People should read The Doomsday Machine by Daniel Ellsberg. The briefcase, nuclear football, is essentially a prop. The ability to launch a nuclear attack is delegated to a considerable number of commanders in the field. After all, if the Soviets managed a surprise nuclear attack on Washington where everyone in the line of succession and the briefcase are destroyed, is the US supposed to have lost its ability to use nuclear weapons? Nuclear weapons create EMPs, making immediate communication after a nuclear attack very difficult. It was thought that commanders in the field needed the ability to respond to a nuclear attack even in the event they were unable to communicate with Washington. All this being to say, even without any elected officials being conscious or reachable, an attack would not have gone unanswered. Also, if neither the president or VP is reachable, the line of succession is the Speaker of the House and then the Senate President pro tem, not members of the president's cabinet. Hey, that sub was just coming to help, that's all. I mean, if it had been the other way, we would have sent a sub or two to help. That was a scary time. I remember my parents freaking out. Rumors were wild, and lots of people were speculating this was part of a Russian attack. I often wonder how close we came to a nuclear exchange because a crazy person wanted to impress Jodie Foster. The president's press secretary, James Brady, was also shot in the assassination attempt, so his assistant, Larry Speakes, was in charge of communicating with the press, but he was not nearly as qualified, and when a reporter asked him who was in charge, he fumbled and said he didn't know. The Secretary of State, former four-star General Alexander Haig, was also in the press room and announced that he was in charge and that everything was normal. He was criticized for being power-mad over that, but in reality he was just trying to prevent the Soviet Union from perceiving weakness or instability in the US government and exploiting the situation with surprise military action. Haig did exactly the right thing. You forgot the best part. He was keeping them in his socks. I've long thought this was the real reason for Alexander Haig's declaration that he was in charge. From the first moment, I was sure he was signaling the Russians that the U.S. could still launch. Kind of fun fact, the Tecumseh curse. Way back in the 1800s, one of the more vile US presidents, I think it was Harrison, without looking it up, had Tecumseh and his brother killed during the time when Americans were assassinating Native Americans. Before he died, Tecumseh put a curse on the US presidency. This curse was that the US president that was elected every 20 years would die in office. This came to be true. Garfield, McKinley, FDR, JFK. It was Reagan that broke the curse by surviving this assassination attempt. After Reagan, it would have then been W, and now whoever ends up winning the current election. Further kind of fun fact, When Reagan was shot at, the Secret Service did not actually think that he was hit. They just went with the reaction of throwing him into the limousine and driving away. They were heading back to the White House. It was only when a Secret Service agent in the car with Reagan inspected him, it was discovered that Reagan had been shot. The Secret Service agent rerouted the limousine to the nearest hospital, probably saving Reagan's life, because Reagan collapsed at the hospital. Fun fact, that Secret Service agent that saved Reagan's life became a Secret Service agent only because of a movie he once saw about the Secret Service saving the president's life. The actor who played the character in the movie was none other than Ronald Reagan. The reason this is unusual is because the Soviets and Russians usually follow fixed patterns to desensitize the US. The repeatedly attack patterns are meant to mimic a real-world attack over and over in order to desensitize the US to a real attack. If they only deployed aircraft and subs during a real attack, it would be very obvious when a real attack was occurring. So they constantly repeat the same attack patterns over and over so we would never know when a real attack was occurring. Those bombers they fly along our borders aren't actually bombers. They are intelligence aircraft that gather data before a nuclear attack. They don't have bombs, they have a huge radar and data links that send targeting data to nuclear submarines. This is important for tracking aircraft carriers and other important moving targets. By routinely flying them near our borders we don't know when a real attack is occurring. During a real attack they could just fly right up to our border without it being seen as unusual. Because they do it constantly and it has become meaningless. So a sub suddenly changing from those patterns is extremely concerning. It either indicates a confused crew becoming lost or they were intentionally provoking us. Edit, for anyone who is interested in further reading, some incredible Aussie translated a bunch of Russia papers about these aircraft, http://www. Net/APA Bear. HTML. Hey, reminds me of this. When briefing the newly elected President Carter on the use of the football, a military attaché opened the case to show the president the suitcase that can destroy the world. Much to his horror, inside the case full of sensitive electronic gadgetry somebody in the Ford administration had placed an empty beer can and a large condom used by horse breeders. Except the whole thing about needing the president's code to launch nukes isn't true. If it was, our nation would be defenseless in the event of a sneak attack on the Capitol. There is nothing preventing a nuclear-armed sub or plane from launching its payload besides the chain of command. Sean Connery was on the sub, he was defecting. I remember this happening. When Al Haig said "I'm in charge here," many of us understood that it was a message to the Russians. It wasn't Seconds of State Haig, it was Supreme Allied Commander Europe General Haig who said it. They knew who they were up against. We will pass through the American patrols, past their sonar nets. We will lay off their largest city and listen to their rock and roll while we conduct missile drills. How can the VP be unavailable? Their main purpose is being second in line in case of such an event. Do you write clickbait headlines for a living? Other Reagan assassination facts. 1. The assassin, John Hinckley Jr., tried to kill Reagan because he was obsessed with Jodie Foster's role from Taxi Driver. John thought Jodie would love him if he killed the US president. There is a good reason he was sent to a mental institution. 2. The assassin missed Reagan, but one of the bullets ricocheted off the presidential limo's window. 3. One of the guards hid have set up the largest gun regulation organizations, https://en. Wikipedia, org/wiki/Brady_campaign.